After Newsfile last week, Saturday, Kwesi Sapong of the BBC called to initiate your regular discussion of Newsfile. You didn't pick up. A weekend and a long week of grieving, painful grieving, Yet, we celebrate the broadcasting excellence Komla represented in Ghana and beyond. Unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. John chapter 12, verses 24. Now, does the NPP endorse inducing delegates with money to vote for candidates in its regional executive election today? Will the party come out of today's elections bruised or unhurt? JIDA criminal prosecutions start in earnest with big fishes like a minister. I have the Attorney General's 19 criminal charges sheet against Abuga Pele and Philip Asibit, a service provider said to have received millions of cedis for doing virtually nothing. And the president picks up a huge communications professional to advise him and head his communications. And what is our problem with Ben Doche Malo? We'll be right back after this break. This is your most authoritative news analysis show, Newsfile. I am Samson Ladi Ayenini.
And international news stories. Focus on Africa.
Hello, I'm Sophie Ikenye.
And I'm Peter Okwocha. Welcome to a special program from Focus on Africa dedicated to our colleague, Komla Dumo.
Ghana's gift to the world, tribute to our very own Komla, who died on Saturday at the age of 41.
Komla was admired and respected the world over. Nelson Mandela's family offer a personal tribute.
He was truly a shining star of Africa.
He was seen as a role model and inspiration to young journalists across the continent, especially to our very own Focus on Africa.
It was always wonderful watching him on World TV presenting, and I knew that I too can make it because Komla did.
Komla was also a man who would encourage me as a young journalist and say, "Great job, Charlie." He had a big smile, but also a big heart.
Also on this program, hoping for a new order. The mayor of Bangui has been elected interim president of the Central African Republic amid ongoing communal violence.
Over the weekend, troops loyal to the South Sudanese government recaptured the key town of Bor. Hello and welcome to Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Today we pay a special tribute to one of our colleagues and Africa's brightest young talents. Komla Dumo, the BBC World and Focus on Africa presenter, died on Saturday of a heart attack.
Our audiences have been pouring their hearts out since the news, but it's a big blow to us, the Focus on Africa family, because Komla was not only a colleague, but a friend. Focus on Africa's Alex Jakana reports.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Focus on Africa from BBC World News. My name is Komla Dumo.
That rich voice, his huge personality and a winning smile put Komla Dumo at the heart of Focus on Africa.
Getting the news right requires a lot of research, attention to detail.
Always impeccably dressed and ever the professional, Komla changed the way the story of Africa is told.
I take what we're doing seriously. And so for me, the most important thing is to know what I'm talking about, to know the stories. And if there's a cool factor, I mean, it doesn't hurt, does it?
In just a few hours, kickoff is just a few hours from now.
A proud Ghanaian, seen here supporting the Black Stars at the World Cup in South Africa nearly 4 years ago, Komla was born in 1972 in Accra, Ghana. He started his career as a traffic reporter at Joy FM before going on to be named Ghana Journalist of the Year in 2003. He then came to us here at the BBC in 2006, working first for radio and then television.
Happy New Year.
On screen, Komla was polished and professional. Behind the scenes, he was a friend to everyone, always finding time for a hug and a hello.
Happy New Year, bro.
It shall be well.
This is the BBC's new broadcasting house. On the 5th floor right here is where Komla used to come to start his day in the morning. And that's because it's right here on this 5th floor that the Focus on Africa team seat, right here, the Focus on Africa television team. And Stefan Mayu is the editor of this program. Stefan, you worked both on radio and television with Komla. Give us a sense of what he meant to this team.
Komla personifies our bond. He's the benchmark. He's the anchor. He's the ambition. He's the model. He gives. His generosity is boundless. And because he gives a lot, we give a lot. Very much.
After saying hello and bear hugging just about everyone on this end of the room, Komla would then make a beeline across to this end of the 5th floor, because this is where the BBC's Swahili TV program sits. He'd come here, yes, to extend the bear hugs, the handshakes, but quite often to inspire his fellow colleagues at the start of their workday. Zuhura Yunus, you are one of those people that Komla usually said hello to. What will your lasting memory of him be?
My lasting memory will be like 2 years ago when we just started training to be on TV. That's when the Tanzania ferry accident happened in Zanzibar, and I was asked to go and talk about it, discuss about it. I've never been on TV, and I said, no, I can't do it. So I ended up not doing it, and then I didn't realize Komla did notice that, and he called me later and asked me, why didn't you do it? I said, I'm afraid I've never done TV before. I can't. He said, no, never say no. Go for it. You'll never know until you do it. So that's one thing I will really, really remember. Never say no. And I guess that's why today I said, yes, I will talk on TV.
So there you go. His legacy living on already.
Absolutely.
More African stories, of course, on the BBC website. Now,
as much as he meant to those of us inside the BBC, Komla's impact reached far beyond this office.
I've only been here for just a few hours, and it is quite clear that something very special is happening in this country.
He was passionate about journalism. A combination of sharp intellect and charm meant that everyone wanted to talk to Komla Dumo.
Is it that sense of, responsibility? At the time it happened, you were president, that connects you or actually drives the position that you have vis-a-vis this issue?
Maybe.
Guilt,
No, not guilt, because whatever guilt I had went away when I took responsibility for not helping them.
From presidents to business leaders to market workers, everyone got the same Komla treatment. Former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan is one of the more recent to pay tribute to Komla, saying, Africa has lost one of its brightest young talents. I shall miss his smile and wonderful sense of humour. Earlier, the country's president, John Dramani Mahama, said, our nation has lost one of its finest ambassadors. Komla Dumo was Ghana's gift to the world. Melinda Gates from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation said, Bill and I are saddened by the death of the BBC's Komla Dumo. His work, bringing the stories of Africa to the rest of the world, will be missed.
Well, folks, that is all from the program.
A big man who leaves behind a big legacy, both professionally and personally, Komla influenced a generation and changed the way the world sees the continent he loved and was so proud of.
And that's the latest BBC News. I'm Komla Dumo.
Komla Dumo will be remembered as an exceptional journalist, a dear friend, but above all, a husband, a son, and a father.
Thank you, thank you.
a shining star of Africa. That's how Nelson Mandela's daughter, Makaziwe Mandela, has described Kumla. The Mandela family called us at the BBC when they first heard the news. They were keen to pay their own tribute to Kumla, whom they met in South Africa in December.
He was the first journalist to speak to the family after the passing of Madiba and the only journalist they invited into the former president's home. Makaziwe spoke to Focus on Africa's Nomsa Matseko in Johannesburg.
There was a lot of shock and sadness amongst us because, I mean, as you say, here was truly a shining star of Africa who came into our lounges, our bedrooms, you know, every day at 7:30 South African time, Focus on Africa, and sometimes on other channels. But as you say, a beacon of Africa's warmth and shine. Kumla was Africa in every essence.
I mean, when you met him, it was at a difficult time when you had just lost your father. But he described to me how he felt like he was part of the family when he came to offer condolence to your family.
He came into my house and called me Mommy, you know, which is really an endearing way in which West Africans call elder people. And I was just comfortable with it. And we chit-chatted about just about everything else. I was very comfortable. And that's the type of person, of professional journalist that he was. You know, as I said, there are those people who have you call it charisma. You know, in Xhosa City, we say mkita, some, you know, who have just that presence with them that make you happy, that make you, even if you are sad, give you that warm feeling inside. And Kumla, for me, even when I was in my saddest moment, I just felt confident.
What is it about him that made him so special?
What makes these people who have this presence, for lack of a better word, I don't know what makes them have the presence that they have. I mean, he was, I always said to my husband, he was a suave dresser, you know, with his impeccable suits. Not that, I mean, I think most of the BBC journalists, especially the men, are very suave dressers, you know, with his ties and what they call it, handkerchief. I mean, he was always well put together, even if when he was in the field with casual clothing, the presence, the tallness, the way that he carried himself, he had this glow on his face all the time. And yeah, like welcoming into your home somebody that you've known for a long time.
Komla Afeke Dumo. Painful grief, like I said, but certainly a lot to celebrate about his life, representing excellence in the journalism profession. The trailblazer, breaking all the rules and refixing and initiating new ones. And like I said earlier, he would have been following the show at this time, and then after the show, there would have been a good discussion about it. And it was the same that was expected last Saturday. As I mentioned, our own Akwesi Sapong, who is also at the BBC with him, called him up to initiate what is their regular discussion of Newsfile. And Komla didn't pick up. I got the news shortly after, and what a weekend it was. So today, we are going to continue in paying tributes to the man Komla Dumo, but I also want you to focus on a certain part of the scripture that I bring to bear to, you know, sort of project our discussion. And this is the scripture that I refer to in John 12:24, and I say, it says, truly, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. And I will admit that it's been after the demise of Komla in the last week that I'm hearing stuff that I may not have projected him to. The BBC's boss says he was their benchmark. And I listen in awe. He says the guy was their benchmark. The BBC's benchmark, from President John Mahama saying he was our greatest ambassador, from Mo Ibrahim, from Kofi Annan, and name them. It's been interesting. All right, we'll deal with that issue, and then we will also be settling to look at the NPP's, Delegates Congress that it is organizing today. The regional executives are being elected into office, and there have been comments about some sort of endorsement of using money to induce the delegates for votes, and that is allowed in the NPP. Is that what exactly the party means? We'll find out if the party will come out of today's program bruised or unhurt. And then, as you're aware, the Attorney General, the biggest law chamber in the country, which we are told is now being run as a professional law firm, has begun prosecutions with some big fishes like a minister. I have the Attorney General's charge sheets of 19 counts or charges against Abuga Pele and Philip Asibit, who is a service provider who is said to have received millions of Ghanaian cedis for doing virtually nothing. And I will ask the question again, what is our problem with the president when he picks a man we all agree is a huge communications professional to advise him and to head his communications team? What at all is our problem? We'll discuss the Ben Doche Malos appointments. Thank you very much indeed. We'll take a break here and we'll be right back. My guests are already seated. I'll introduce them to you. You're welcome back. And this is a show that is dedicated to the memory of brother and friend Komla Dumo. My guests are seated in the studio, and I'll introduce them to you right away. From my extreme left, right, I have Nana Akomia, former communications director of the New Patriotic Party, now the biggest foot soldier in the party. Good morning and welcome to the show, Nana.
Morning, Samson.
Great. Well, Nana will have a story to tell about Komla Dumo because they also had a relationship, and he is the man that took Komla Dumo to the president, John Kufuor, leading to the president seeking to have him play a certain role in government or in the state, so to speak. Then I have Dr. Mawea Zakaria. He is a development and organizational policy analyst. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
When Komla was in first year, you were his roommate.
That's right.
Great to have you on the show. We'll talk a lot about policy, so he'll have some input in that regard also. Now to my left, immediate left, I have James Ejenim Boateng. He is a staffer at the office of the president. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Great to have you on the show. When you were on radio, obviously you would have had some working relation with Komla, and even after that.
Yeah, that's correct.
Great.
That's
and you and Stan Dogbe have such a good relationship going, and Stan Dogbe and Komla Dumo, you would always see Komla together with Stan.
Stan was 1 year behind me in journalism school.
Right.
I think that I used to compete for a bit of the morning market when Komla used to do radio here.
Right. Thank you very much, James Ejenim Boateng. And we have I'm tempted to call him the name that Komla would have called him. But let's keep it simple. Egbert Fabel Jr. He's a lawyer and also managing editor of the Observer newspaper. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning.
When you were chief vandal, you sought to provide Komla protection. Mm-hmm. Okay, everybody here has some connection to the man Komla Dumo. I remember reporting from Kumasi when about 32 parishioners perished in an accident, and I had to count the headless bodies. At a point I was breaking down and he said, look, hold on. We went off air and he said, hold on. Make sure you are doing the job. And I came back. I was able to manage it without tears. Gentlemen, all of you, welcome to the show. Thank you very much. Now, there's been quite a good discussion of Komla's life, and there's been such revealing, discussion of his life. And I'm beginning actually to, in the course of this week, learn even a lot more about the man Komla Dumo. I'd like us to try our best, whilst we all painfully grieve and certainly would like to share memories of him, try to, at this point, begin to project the discussion about him on some of the statements that are being made about him. We have heard Sam Jonah, we have heard Kofi Annan, we have heard our own President John Mahama, we have heard Mo Ibrahim, we have heard the BBC, and the sort of comments that they make about him. And some of you have also made your own comments about him in his professional capacity. If we could project the discussion in that light, moving a bit away from the continuing, sorrowful posture. Obviously, we can't do without that, but we try and manage it. I'd like to start with you, Dr. Zakaria. You were with him first year in the same room. Briefly, what was your encounter with him like? Just very briefly so that we can move on.
Yeah, thank you so much, and then good morning to your listeners. With Komla Dumo, I actually came to meet him in the room that we were moved together. He was actually in the inner room, and I was in the outer room. We had a very close relationship. In fact, I, in some occasions, had to manage some of his guests. Even though he was, at the time, starting up building his profile as a journalist and also as a very popular individual at the time. And so a lot of people used to visit him. And sometimes he hardly could manage the number of people that came in to visit. So in some occasions, I had to stand in to talk to people, to try to let them understand that he's a busy man. And, for him, he likes some time out. And he was mostly at time out, trying to, to network and to do his own things. And what I found really, intriguing about him, and it helped me a lot, and a lot of my friends who visited me from the north at the time, because those days when people came to Accra, they used to come to me in the room, and they saw him. And he was so methodical. He was so understanding of the processes that was required for a person to move from stage A to B. And he never jumped a step. And this thing influenced a lot of people. Like, even the time we were together, he even did not start the traffic watch program. He started whilst at Legon, and you could see how he moved. He was, at the time, traveling on taxis, even though you could earn money, so sometimes he brought in fried rice for us to share, and, so those kind of things. But it was a very modest time at the time that we met, and he grew from there. There's one experience.
So when you hear someone like Sam Jonah say he was a consummate professional, that encapsulates your memory of him as you followed him in his professional career.
Yeah. I think all words that I use to express him are really understatements, because words are just to express what you think, and the ability to express them have their limitations. And I tell you, the ability to express what Komla is made of is not found in words at this stage, seriously, because for things that I see and having followed him through, I tell you, there was one particular experience whilst I went to medical school as well. And then whilst he had finished, whilst I was still in school, and for some reasons I had to spend more time in school. And whilst, I was walking on the road of Odorais, and then it had been some time since I saw him, and I saw somebody, very intimidating, sitting in a Mercedes-Benz car, and then he blew the horn, and he called me by my nickname and lowered, and then I was moving with my friend, and when he died, the friend called me, and he told the friend who is now also driving the Benz, he's telling me that, I tell you, anytime I sit in this Benz, it's Komla Jumo that I remember, because the day that we met him, whilst we were trekking to go and take Trotsky, he was driving the Mercedes-Benz from that stage.
Right.
So these are things, a lot of them, there's no time for us to, to deliver the point about all these guys, but he's a great guy.
Thank you very much. Now, James, again, when you hear, for example, the BBC, and we just watch the clip where the man who sort of managed him was his boss within that entity, describes him as Komla was our benchmark.
Well, thank you very much. Let me first and foremost, use this platform to extend my heartfelt condolence to the family, particularly the father, the sister, the brother, the wife, and the kids, and the larger family. I've been wondering what it feels like for a man as distinguished as Professor Dumont to lose not just a son, but a very fine son. It must be very, the pain must be very excruciating indeed. I think that for me, I think Komla was Africa's voice on the world stage. I think he was a great guy. He was a broadcaster. He was a broadcaster extraordinary. He was an icon. You could see that he knew and understood what he was doing. You could see the passion, the professionalism. I think that he perhaps hit the highest stage that anybody, maybe in our contemporary broadcasting history, I think that Komla is the guy who's got into the very, 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 very top. We have a history of producing the Hammonds, the Kwabena Mensahs, the Ben Doche-Malos, the Tony Andokosas, and our own Elizabeth Ohini, all of them from the BBC, some of them also from Deutsche Welle and others. But I think that it's Komla who really who got to a certain level that we are yet to get to. So for me, he was, and the way President Mahama describes him, he was one of our very finest ambassadors, and ambassador in the sense that every time he stood there, even though he was discharging his duties, there was something about it that Ghana benefited from, and I think that he was Africa's voice on the world stage. It's painful to note that today we will not have the same voice. Of course, it's true, we may have some other Africans also working on the international stage. I'm not sure that the feeling is the same. All of this notwithstanding, there was something really, really, I think he was extremely down to earth when you met him. His towering image notwithstanding, he really, really could come down to the level of people and interact with you. I recall my last encounter with him had to do, I think, with a Stanchard program at Movenpick that he came down to moderate, and it must have been a Friday or thereabouts, and there was supposed to be another program also on a Monday, and he asked me after the program, Charlie, how? Charlie, why you how? You forget in touch. Is the vice president coming for the economist program? And I said, it could be the president, and that's my encounter, my last encounter, I think. It is not for nothing that all of these tributes are pouring in, and the list is endless. I saw Dr. Valerie Amos's tribute as well. I saw a very beautiful piece done by Luce Doucet from the BBC, Peter Horrocks also from the BBC, and then, I mean, all of these are the ones from Aliko Dangote and the many. I think that, and I've been wondering if Komla, I mean, if he was alive today, he would have been able to gauge how high people, I mean, the high esteem with which people hold in. And I'm wondering and asking myself, why can't we do this for people whilst they are alive? Why can't we show them just a little bit of what we think, I mean, of them? For me, this was a very, very fine young man, not just for Ghana, but also for our continent. It is true that, I mean, he's a very inspiring character. It is true that many of our young people, not just, I mean, within our jurisdiction, but also beyond our continent, looked up to him. And it is very sad that, I mean, 7 days ago, we lost him in the way we did.
Egbert, what did you mean? Sorry, forgive me. Egbert, what did you mean when you said that the Komla Dumont story has too many life posts? And you say that any young man or woman who takes 20% of the Komla Dumont story will not regret in life.
Yeah. By that, I simply meant that the youth of today, generally speaking, I mean, we know the get-rich-quick attitude, the laissez-faire approach, the cutting corners, you know, just to make it and all. And if you follow the odyssey of Komla, you realize that, first of all, as some have said, Komla did not do secondary education in Ghana. He came to Ghana from Nigeria with one story or the other. So when we all met at Legon, you are going out to hang out with friends, and who do you know? You know people you grew up with in your neighborhood in Accra, Kumasi, Tamale, Wa, wherever, Cape Coast, or people you went to senior high school with in Ghana. So we're all groupies. You know, we moved in groups. So who could Komla move with? Who could he move with? He had to start all over and virtually afresh. Yet in the end, he became a gravitational force. I mean, somebody, you know, to whom, or somebody that all looked up to, whether, you know, you were older or the same age or younger. People gravitated towards Komla. And so I just said that, yes, we may have lost Komla. God knows why, God knows best. But for those not only in journalism today, but even those in senior high school, those in our universities, those who have just come out of universities and are trying to chart career paths, there is a lot to learn from it. I mean, he talks about his medical school matter. There's some. There are a lot of people who have gone through similar situations and have given up. Today they're on the streets doing something else altogether, which, you know, with due respect to what some of them are doing, you do not expect people with so much promise to do. So I just, in making that pronouncement, was giving a commission to the youth of today that no matter what life throws at you, just catch it and make sure that you throw it back at life in its face by ensuring that, you know, you get better. You get better. Komla never sat in journalism school.
That's true.
So how could Komla Dumont have transitioned to present news? When Komla was at Joy FM, I can, without fear of contradiction, I don't think that Komla was doing news stories. Komla was not reading news on Joy FM. He was presenting a magazine program. And so if he transitioned to BBC Radio, and after a short time, he gets, you know, posted to BBC TV, it should tell you, you know, that whatever situation you find yourself in, you ought to apply yourself. It is not about the money. It is not about the fame. It is just about ensuring that what God has put in you and what you yourself have added to yourself by way of education, you apply it for the betterment of not only yourself or your immediate family, but, I mean, humanity. Komla is seen virtually today as an ambassador of Africa. or was seen in that way. So from north, south, east, and west, tributes are pouring and all. Question is, before Komla, there were Ghanaians who had bagged onto the world broadcast stage. I can mention, and James mentioned John Hammond. We've also forgotten Richard Cote of the VOA. When I was growing up, Richard Cote was a voice. And then all of a sudden we heard that he left for the VOA, and I used to listen to him on VOA. But compare all these greats and what they achieved to Komla, and the denominating factor for me is the age and how he was able to, just like, let's say, university, the semester system. You are supposed to finish in 6 semesters. And so the longer time you take in passing your subjects, your cumulative grade point will go down because there's a denominating factor as to how many semesters you used. So if you look at all those grades and the years at which they did that, compared to Komla Dumont's 30-something years, you see that if we were to award, if it was a degree awarding system, Komla Dumont's grade point, cumulative grade point, would have been very, 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 very high. Because at 41, what he had achieved, no one from these ends of the world had equaled it, or had, if you like, done something equal. And so I think that whilst we boo, whilst we mourn and all of that, let our youth also do an introspection. You don't necessarily have to be a Komla Dumont. You may be in accounting, you may be in medicine, you may be in law, you may be in journalism and all. Just cut a path based on hard work, respect for ethics and all those things. So that in a long haul, it's not that because somebody's died and people are pouring all kinds of tributes, positive ones at that, you also think that, let me also do also that when I die, people will say same of me. No. One of the things I tell myself, my own inspirational story is that because we used to follow our parents around to funerals and the rest when we were all growing up, every time you go to a funeral and the eulogies are being done, you should ask yourself that when I die, what will be said of me? If you have that at the back of your mind, that life is a journey and that someday you also be lying down and all kinds of things will be said about you, you will sit up and say, listen, I want to have a certain address. I want to have a certain, brand when I'm also called. And so the love and, if you like, the fear for the future should let you know that the steps you take today should be right, should be measured, and you should just wait for your time.
Nana, beyond saying his death was unbelievable by Mo Ibrahim and all of us, obviously, that's what we're saying. He goes on to speak about the fact that Komla represented the finest of, the face of Africa, so to speak, on the BBC stage. We have heard comments coming from all over, saying without any reservation that Komla was world class. Your initial encounters with him, which led to the meetings that then subsequently got him to meet with the president, John Kufuor, at the time, you surprised by these descriptions?
Well, thank you. Let me say good morning to your viewers and to my fellow panelists, Dr. Maria, whom I've never met, and also Ajeni Boatin. I didn't know that he was a staffer at the office of the president.
He's been a staffer at the office of the president for a while.
Okay, so, and it's good to meet all of you this morning. Yes, Komla is exactly 1 week, I think.
Right.
It was a Saturday.
Yeah.
So by this time, the whole country was agog with anxiety because there have been little snippets. I saw something on Facebook. If it wasn't...
That would have been after midday, somewhere after 1 o'clock.
Yes. I got something around 10 a.m. from somebody, a very responsible financial person. I know these bankers and financiers, they don't like to make too many jokes.
Right.
So when I saw it, I was a bit baffled coming from that person. And I'm sure many people were getting those little snippets. We didn't know what was happening until really terrible. In the last 1 week, we have been inundated with tributes from all over the world. And some of those tributes you have mentioned. I mean, Komla certainly deserves all those tributes. Those people who are making these tributes for Komla are not people who will just say anything because they have to say something.
Bill and Belinda Gates.
Yes. These are people who would speak because they believe in what they are saying. And it's come from all of us. So that is a clear testimony to the quality that Komla represented. And we sitting here 1 week after, I don't know what we would say that people haven't said already. For me, when he came into my office in 2003 to congratulate me on my new appointment as a Minister for Information, we talked a little bit. I had to go and see President Kufuor. And I asked him if he had ever met President Kufuor, and he said no. And I said, well, I have to go see him. Come along. We'll probably get a chance to see him. So we went to the castle. I saw President Kufuor. When I finished with him, I said to him, oh, I came with this young man. I don't know if you can find some 2 minutes to say hello. And President Kufuor said, oh, I've heard about him. Please bring him in. So he came in, Komla came in, and they got on very well. Spent another 15 minutes talking. And President Kufuor told him how he has admired him and heard so many good things about him. And then said that he should leverage the influence that he has in the media to some youth, work for the youth of Ghana. And that ended up with the proposal to have him work on the board of the National Youth Council, as it was then. Eventually, the appointment came. Subsequently, I met Komla and asked him about the work on the Youth Council. He said that he couldn't do much there because they didn't have a policy, and so they didn't have a budget. I mean, a credible policy, and so he wasn't happy with the state of affairs at the Youth Council. Indeed, a couple of, maybe 2 years after that, I found myself in the Ministry of Youth. And what he had told me 2 years earlier, that there was no policy, and so he really couldn't see what they were working to at the place. It was one of the things that stayed with me. And when I went to the ministry, in those 1.5 years that I stayed at the ministry, I ensured that we had a youth policy. Komla basically was larger than life in terms of even his personality. He has this personality that you could not ignore. Very large frame, very imposing frame. And then he also had talent. His voice was a voice that is made for radio. And I wish that I had that kind of voice. Booming voice. And you hear him the first time and he arrests your attention because of the tenor of the voice. Right. And then you just don't have a naturally endowed. You must make use of it. He put in a lot of hard work and quickly established himself in the Joy FM and became a main player in the morning radio. It was no surprise to some of us that the BBC picked him up. And we knew that he was going to make the same impact at the BBC. It gave him a world stage. He wasn't intimidated by it. He took it by the horns. And we listened to the testimonies from his colleagues at BBC. It shows clearly that they themselves knew that this young man was going to go places using the BBC. And he was on his way up. There was no doubt about it. Every Ghanaian felt proud when these days BBC TV is available, at least in the big cities of Ghana. So we could follow his progress. We could take pride in the work that he was doing. And so they went last week by this time when the snippets of information started coming. It was totally unbelievable, totally unbelievable. But then it was confirmed. And we are still coming to terms with it. I must congratulate you, his colleagues at Joy FM, that you've done a lot in the last 1 week to eulogize your former colleague. And it's good. It sends a signal to all of you that if you do well at the station, I mean, not only when you've passed, but when you are alive, the station obviously recognizes the work that you are doing. It's a sad loss. As for the family, I just can't imagine what they're going through. If the rest of the nation and the rest of the world are going through what they're going through, I just can't imagine the family. And I know our prayers are with them.
Your text messages are welcome. 1422, that's a text line. 1422. You can also post your comments on our Facebook wall or send them to Newsfile at myjoyonline.com. This show is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of MTN everywhere you go. Star Assurance as well. They are CIMG Company of the Year 2012. They continue to give you the best of insurance products. It's also brought to you by Lipton Tea. That is inspiration flowing from nature. Also by Errata Motors, where you can get the best vehicles for less, new and slightly used. So just make a contact and get the best that you can have. Also, Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. Well, we're not going to dwell too long again on this subject. We'll move on and to discuss other matters, but your messages are welcome. Of course, tributes in memory of Komla Domo. I'll read them very shortly when I have them. So send them in and I'll share them with the rest of the world. We're talking about the man who represented the face of journalism in terms of excellence in this country and beyond. And I keep going back to that statement by the BBC that he was their benchmark. I've had a little, experience with the BBC reporting for them as a correspondent, and so I know when they talk about the standards, they are really talking about a whole lot. Now, I'd like us to wrap up on this note, on this particular discussion. And you see, if you belong to that very small section who hear some tribute from certain sections of the society and you get annoyed because you don't feel that they are sincere, please forgive. At this time, the focus is to project what the man actually represented. Whether those who are doing it are those who didn't really like him, doesn't matter. Now, I wanted to come to you, just take about a minute each from all of you. Just one particular thing that you want to use Komla to represent and to use that to convey a message to all who are listening to us, particularly the youth. Egbert has done quite, a great deal about that. But take some small aspect of him. I remember his punctuality, unquestionable, and his desire to read. So I'll start with you, Egbert.
I remember Komla for many things, but at this stage, what I just want to transmit is my respect for his humanity. Komla, in all things, knew also that he was human. And I recall in 2003 when the GJ made him Journalist of the Year, some sections of the media, surprisingly, came up strongly. I remember from the Ghana News Agency in particular, all kinds of deputations resulting in the release of a statement. And interestingly, Komla, I think, was at Harvard then, and he had come back home because of this same award. And when he gauged, the commentary and stuff that were coming, he decided to consult. One of the people he consulted, or two of the people he consulted, were my good self and our own very good friend, Abdul Malik Kwekubakun. We were sitting at a coffee shop when Komla just called and said he wanted to pass by to see us for a discussion. When he came, he said, well, among many things, he respects the GJ, didn't even know that this whole thing with SNIT was going to result in this award. But if people are saying the kinds of things that they are saying against him.
At that time, you didn't have to put in an entry.
At all.
It was a team that sat down and decided that we pick this gentleman and give the award
to. So Komla said he was going to give it up. And then Kwaku and I were very surprised and said, what do you mean? Listen, do you know the import of what you are doing? You stand for something, you've done this thing, you didn't set out that you won the award and so you are doing this thing in a certain way. It is a peer review mechanism and your own peers have reviewed you within a certain regulatory framework.
You didn't apply for it.
You didn't apply for it. So please, I mean, you do this, you let down a whole lot of people. So go for it, take it. Let those who want to do whatever they want to do or say what they let them say it. And I remember telling him about the fact that when Jesus was sending his disciples to go and preach the gospel to people, and some of them asked him, what about if we go and we are not received? Jesus said, shake the dust off your feet and move on. And so this was for me, I mean, something about Komla Dumont, his humanity. He didn't want to change anything that he couldn't change.
Okay. So for Egbert, his humanity, and that is where he wants us to take some lessons. Good. And he says you will never regret if you take only 20% of what he stood for and pursue it wholeheartedly. And he talks about the controversy, and immediately it just brought to mind, I was doing my job as a journalist, and I got insulted by a politician who said, you and that your Komla Dumont, those kind of things. And you know, at the time, you know, he represented the face not only of this station, but I could say journalism in radio broadcasting, so to speak. What do you want anyone listening to take?
Well, I think for me, I'll touch on two brief issues. I think Komla's life, underscores the oft-repeated point about how it is not about how long you live, but how well you affect or impacted on humanity.
Right.
I mean, for his young 41-year age, clearly he impacted. He impacted his community. He impacted his nation. He impacted his continent, and I think that the youth of the world. I think also that when you take a look at his life, clearly setbacks were not things that could set him back. Obviously, he was somebody who, I mean, as with all human beings, when setbacks
came publicly to admit that, look, I failed medical exams.
Exactly.
Many when
setbacks came his way, he was able to step back and step forward again. I mean, Egbert alluded to that. He drops out of medical school. He comes back to Ghana. He starts it afresh. He gets a chance to do radio, but it's not a high-profile program. He started off from reporting traffic, but he had his eyes on the ball, and he reaches the very, very top. I mean, it tells you that setbacks may come, but when those setbacks come, you step back and you step forward again, which is exactly what I think he did.
His ability to step, when setbacks confront him, he steps back and steps forward. That's James Ejenim Boateng. And I seek to encapsulate that in the word fortitude, you know, being able to have courage in times of adversity and not to lose your focus. Now, Doc, what do you want us to take away?
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, in Islam, we say that the essence of death is for those remaining on earth to smoothen and beautify their deeds. You know, that is the whole essence of people dying, so that you realize that, I mean, I'll also die one day, so that your lifestyles, what you do, would clearly be beautified and smoothened. Now, I mean, looking at him, like I said before, words are difficult to come. But I think that his attribute of patience, perseverance, and dedication to duty is something that is fantastic. It's something that if anybody, pays critical attention to and applies to his life, would achieve. Like I was explaining, is somebody who would be patient to go through any difficult processes that are involved in moving from one step to the other. And that is something that if the youth of today would, imbibe, it would, inure to a benefit. And then perseverance, somebody who actually, endures pain whilst trying to reach a goal. And all of us are aware of, the things that he went through. He was hypertensive. He had, he was aware that of the possible implications of certain actions and inactions that, would lead to ABC. And, his post on Facebook suggests that he was aware of the health risk. That is not to say that people should take unnecessary risk in trying to make a point. But that thing is telling us of perseverance. Do not give up when you are faced with challenges. You have to persevere within the limits of reasonability. And the last is dedication to duty. This was the guy who was so dedicated to whatever assignment that he was given, and he excelled virtually in every field that he entered. You are testimonies, everybody is testifying to what he did at Joy FM. And at BBC, within a short period of time, he moved from radio to TV and to, this is something that we haven't seen, for somebody to move from one department to the other and excelling in both departments.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doc. And he uses the 2 P's, patience and perseverance, and adds dedication to duty. Nana Kumia.
I think I'll just follow up from James Ajinin Boatin. Basically, the big lesson for all of us, especially young people, is the way Kobla managed to turn around what could have been a major adversity. Here's a person who was sacked from medical school. Many young people would have been so disillusioned that their lives would have been stopped immediately. I know young people who have been merely repeated. They failed term exams and they were repeated, not sacked. And they wouldn't go to classes. I tell you. It's so common. They wouldn't go to classes.
They find something to blame.
Their pride is so wounded that they would stop school. There's this gentleman that I used to admire when I was in secondary school. He was a year ahead of me. But then when he got to the O levels, he didn't do too well. So he had to come and repeat. Merely coming to sit in the class with us, his genius, he couldn't do it. So he came to write the exams all right. But he wouldn't come into the secondary school and stay in the dormitory and all of that. Chose to stay in town, and he failed for the second time. And the last time I saw him, I was so sad because he was a year ahead of me, and all of us used to look up to him. So for that adversity to come Kobla's way, being sacked from a prestigious program like medicine, and not letting it.
His brother, actually, younger brother, went on to become a doctor.
It's not as even your own family. You can't look your own mother in the face because here your younger brother and it could affect your confidence and your will to go on. But obviously he did, and eventually he ended up in a place where many people would agree that he wouldn't be having the same kind of recognition if even he had gone to medical school and qualified. Right. So that should be a good lesson to young people.
When he was asked that question, his response was that, he believes that, doctors are able to touch human life in a more practical or personal way, but he believes also that the opportunity he had, gave him the chance to be able to touch people in some very good
Something
measure.
If you let me, I thought that, when Anna ended beautifully, he should also have added the lesson. He spoke about the lesson that there is in Komla's life, particularly for young people. I think that there's also a lesson in that for parents. And Komla himself alludes to that. In one of the voice clips you played, it must have been yesterday or the day before, where he talks about, not the same lines, but he talks about, I'm paraphrasing, he's not going to force his will on his child, and that whatever the child decides to do, he will support him. Come to think of it, a professor's child who drops out of medical school, how many people are going to be able to take that? He also tells you of the environment within which he grew and the support of parents and how that impacts on a child. So there's a lesson in it, not just for young people, but for parents as well.
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. And I'll bring you some of the text messages that you have been sending in. Jerry Amponsa sends this from New York. He says, I pray our brother Komla Dumo's works in broadcasting will be inculcated in the curriculum of journalism in Ghana. He left an untouched legacy for us to emulate. May his special soul rest in peace. Baba Adam in Stuttgart writes, my heartfelt condolences go to the family of Komla Dumo and Ghanaians at large. As people, we must at all times try to celebrate people while they are alive than when they are gone to glory. Ibrahim Kopa in Tamale writes, the worldwide eulogy poured on Komla Dumo due to his journalistic competence should be a lesson to our Ghanaian journalists. Frederick G. Sampson writes, today we all celebrate Komla for the selfless life and great feat he achieved even in his 41-year life. He was an inspiration to many, even to me, though I never met him personally. May his gentle soul rest in peace. Bonti Benjamin writes from Achimtafo, indeed, Komla really raised the flag of our nation high, and we cannot stop the river of tears flowing across the country for his contributions towards the development of his motherland. Demrifa Due Komla. Samuel Bryan Boabeng in Aoshi writes, my thoughts and prayers remain with the family of Komla Dumo in this difficult moment. God knows best, and I hope journalists in Ghana have all seen the tributes of Komla Dumo. How will they be remembered? Bribes, lies, propaganda, or insults. Park Ganiu, right from Savligu, he says, Komla Afeke Dumo, you will last long in our memories, just as kola nuts last long in the mouth of those who value it. Right, and that just reminds me yesterday watching and listening to Nana Asase and the eulogy that he did, perfect one. And at a ceremony here in the forefront of Joy FM, and watching the CEO himself, everybody from Katie, Chikwam, Kenna Shigbe, who obviously had such a fantastic time with Komla Dumo, watching Samen, City FM now, and watch them break down so uncontrollably. It spoke a lot and ministered a lot to me as well. Kwamena Edu Buama in UCC writes, Komla was undoubtedly Ghana's unappointed ambassador to the whole world, hoisting our flag wherever he went. His sudden demise is shocking, and I pray God take care of his wife and family. Thank you very much for your very kind messages. Of course, everybody is shattered. You don't have to be his family to be as shattered. Thank you very much for all of the messages you have sent in. And we say his gentle soul rest in perfect peace. I say his. He lived his life. He lived this life fully as the gift that it was to the world, regardless how short it was. And I also say, take heart to my senior in Chambers, Charles Wernis. Thank you, all of you, for your messages. We'll take a quick break. We'll return and look at the President's appointment of Ben Doche Malo. We'll look at the Attorney General's prosecution that is started on the people who are alleged or accused or stand accused of having done some criminal wrong in the Jida riots. And then we'll find out if in the NPP, cash is a gift for campaigning. We'll be right back. Thank you very much for keeping your dials here. This is your Multi TV. This is Joy News Channel. You are listening to us on Joy 99.7 FM and over a dozen affiliate stations across the country, and sister station Love 99.5 in Kumasi. Thanks very much for keeping your dials here. And we're streaming live at MultiTV World/streams and myjoyonline.com. This show is also available later on your Sky channel 290. That is the ABN TV in the UK and elsewhere in Europe. Well, now let's move on, but like a friend of mine just suggested that we should just play what Komla used to love, one of his songs, Tupac's songs, and then just close the show. But we have to move on. Now, you certainly are aware that Ben Doche Malo has been appointed by the President, His Excellency, the President of the Republic, as Head of Communications, as his communications advisor. Now, it has attracted some comments from people within the industry and also from politicians as well. Some say this is waste. Some say this government is confused. What is it exactly doing? I won't canvass the reasons. They would speak. My guests will speak to the reasons right here and now. Now, I'll start with you, James, on this. You've been Deputy Information Minister before. I suspect that you certainly will endorse this decision by the President, and there are those who are expressing disbelief that this is one of the finest that you can have in the industry. And the President brings him on to help in his communication and to advise him and to sort of, we are told, to streamline the communication, outfits within the presidency. And suddenly, people are up in arms. Where is this coming from? It's waste of money. You're piling too many people at the presidency, and yet you are complaining that there's no money to pay civil servants and all of those things. What's your reaction to these?
Thanks. Thank you very much. Well, I think that my view is that people have a right to say what they want to say. I mean, this is a constitutional democracy, and people in government must have a big heart to listen to what expressions people want to make, justifiably or unjustifiably. I mean, in all of this, there's one thread that runs through all of the criticisms that people make. All the people who have criticized the appointments, and it appears that they are talking about either timing or something, they say one thing. They also say that the President has chosen a very competent person for the job. So I'm beginning to wonder, what's the criticism really about? I mean, everybody says that, well, Ben Doche Malo is a very fine guy. I mean, one of the finest you can find, and they think that the President has made a very good appointment.
What is he coming to do? When you have the Minister of Information, you have two deputies who have been doing the job that it appears he's coming to do.
First and foremost, let me say that this model itself is not new to our jurisdiction. It is not alien to Ghana. It is not alien to many, many other places. I've heard people say that it breeds conflict and is duplicitous. I don't think so. When you go to Nigeria, you have Mr. Labaran Maku, who is Information Minister. You have Reuben Abati, who is spokesperson. In South Sudan, there's Information Minister. No, it's for good reason. I mean, it's for good reason. It's for good reason. My point is that even South Sudan, the President has a spokesperson. It has Information Minister. In Kenya, there's a spokesperson to the President. In South Africa, there's a spokesperson to the President. All of these countries have either communications and information boxed together or separately. So it is not new. In any case, I mean, assuming...
Is it like what we had in our recent history where you had press secretary to the President?
Assuming I had not even gone outside our jurisdiction, I am not sure that is new. Nana Kumia was Honorable Information Minister. There was a spokesperson to the President. Did that create any conflicts? I have served in the information ministry as a deputy minister before. We had a spokesperson during our time. I don't see where the conflict is or what the source of conflict is. I mean, maybe he may be in a better position to tell us. I mean, we had a minister in President Kufuor's time, a spokesperson in President Kufuor's time.
Press secretary to the president.
Well, and
or it doesn't make any difference.
I don't think that the nomenclature itself makes any difference.
Because if
Plus,
you use that, the question is, the president now has someone also in that same sort of,
that's
office,
exactly the point.
which is executive secretary to the president.
No, executive secretary to the president is secretary to the president. That is not the same person as press secretary. I mean, President Kufuor had a secretary to himself, as secretary to the president, quite apart from the fact that he had a press secretary or spokesperson to the president, and also information minister. Plus, how many other spokespersons were there at the information ministry who were in charge of social services, this and that and that?
Do you have a chief of staff and 2 deputies to the chief of staff?
What do you mean? You mean right now?
No, in Kufuor's time.
He will be in a good position to answer that. But my point is that my point is that information minister, there's a role for everybody. I think that, I'm happy about what people say, that Ben Dochemalo is one of the finest you can find. The president has made a very brilliant choice. The people talking about how, it's duplicitous. There are people who have even said it's duplicitous, only to turn around to say that, but we don't even understand how the communications of this administration works. So I pause a minute and I ask myself, so what really is the basis for the criticism? If you don't understand how the communication apparatus works in government, what then becomes the basis for saying that it's duplicitous? The information minister and his deputies have a role to play. Their role, fundamentally, is to coordinate all communications activities of government, and by that I mean the ministries, departments, and agencies. My candid view, my honest view, is that the presidency and its communication apparatus ought to be run separately, but it must also fuse into the overall communication setup of the Ministry of Information. We are not reinventing. I'm not, in these expressions, reinventing the wheel. It was same as was done by President Kufuor, the same as I think is
the comparison that you're making.
No, it's not a
some
comparison.
say is not correct because you didn't have an information minister with 2 deputies.
Also, is the number of deputies
that's also an issue.
I'm talking about the model.
Right.
Well, I'm sure that I'm talking about the model generally. You can raise issues with the number of deputies, but that is not even entirely correct. We had information minister. Was that not with 2 deputies? Was Frank Ejukum later on not deputy information minister? Was Andy Awuni later not deputy information minister? Were these 2 gentlemen not there at the same time? So I think that there's factual inexactitude. So for me, I think that the president, we have an executive president. He's made a decision. He's looked at a certain model. And in all of this, don't forget, the president is also a communications person. At one point, he himself has superintended over government communication. Working as information minister, coordinating what also happens at the presidency. But even when we have not had people coming in the form of spokespersons or press secretaries to the presidency, it is true that at all material times we've had a certain form of communications bureau existing at the presidency. Right. I think that Mr. Rawlings' time, we had a castle communications bureau which was headed by Madame Valerie Saki. There was no spokesperson at the time, but the information minister did coordinate. Subsequent to that, we saw the model which was rolled out by the NPP. We saw the model which was followed through also during President Nelson's time. I am not sure what the problem is that people are raising, only to come back to say that we don't even understand the model and yet we think it's duplicitous.
Right.
I don't think so. In any case, the statement itself was released by the Minister of Information. Clearly, I believe that if he had issues, he would have raised that. It is because he sees a role for everybody. And the president clearly understands what he is doing. That's why we are where we are.
Right. Egbert, Dochemalo's pedigree unquestionable. Professor Audrey Gadjepo of the School of Communications, University of Ghana, says that my alarm at hearing the news really has to do with how things are organized at the presidency. And also, I wondered whether it will not be a duplication of what perhaps a whole Ministry of Information that seems to be dedicated to communication from government, from the presidency, is about. And she says, I wish we had a clearer sense of what the organogram is within the presidency and how the presidency is organized in terms of advices on the different key segments that ought to be advising the presidency, and also how communications is organized at the governmental level. What are the overlaps between the Ministry of Information and the communications at the presidency? I am not clear at all about these matters. She says she is confused. Are you as confused as she is?
Oh, well, I will not say that I'm confused. I think that when Dr. Odregajipo says that, it is just to, communicate a certain station that we've come to in this country. I don't think that she's confused. Dr. Odregajipo knows what she's talking about. When she uses confusion, it's not about a personal confusion. It's about the dissonance that is coming from the Flagstaff House. You see, the Flagstaff House's communication itself is so confusing. It is confusing. But thank God, we are all not confused.
Proceed mindful of the issues that James has raised.
But James, what do you expect James to say? James cannot say anything else than what he has said. But in any event, let's look at the issues dispassionately, and that is what I'll strive to do. One fine morning, we get up in this country, and later in the day, we get a press release under the hand of my very good friend, Honorable Mahama Yariga, Minister of Information, that the president has appointed my good friend, Mr. Bendoche Malo, as Senior Communications Advisor and Head of Communications. That is the official designation of Bendoche Malo. He's Senior Communications Advisor to the President and Head of Communications. If you want to look at the context of a Senior Communications Advisor, if you want to look at it administratively, then it may just well mean that it is a role, it is a function. But if you also want to look at it politically, is it the case that there are a number of communications advisors at the presidency and that
the
senior most is Bendoche Malo? You see the confusion that I was talking about? Senior communications advisor. Is it a role or it's an administrative grade that James is, for example, a communications advisor at the presidency, Stan is, blah, Madam A, Miss B, and all are communications advisors.
If that is what it were, what will be the confusion then?
No, you see, the confusion then is that, but it is, so the communication should have been clearer. You don't just get up and say that somebody is senior, what, is it an administrative role? Or it is that there are a number of communications advisors at the presidency, but now the senior, even with the policy positions at the Flagstaff House, they say somebody is senior policy advisor to the president. Not so.
In your firm, you may be head of firm,
yes,
or you may be managing partner.
Yes.
You would have maybe some people decide the designation. It's a senior partner. This is also a partner. This is also, an associate, a lead associate.
Yeah.
Is that not a clear grading?
Unfortunately for you, Samson, you say in my firm. That is my firm. We are talking about the presidency of the Republic of Ghana. My taxes, your taxes. All of us here, our taxes go into the payment of all these functions. So what happens in my firm, when I close my door, unless it is criminal, it is not a matter for public discourse, you understand? What happens at the presidency with respect to appointments and the rest, it's a matter for public discourse.
So your concern is not about the structure and a grading, which is not a confusing one, as you say, but rather the numbers and how much it will cost the public.
I'm going to come to that.
All right,
I'm going to come to that. So you see, first of all, there's confusion, even in the way this communication was put out. I'm a taxpayer. When the president says that somebody has been appointed as a senior communication advisor, is it the case that it is just a role for administrative description, or it is the case that there are a number of communication advisors and that this person is now senior to all of them? We need to know. So we know who we are paying and all of that. That's one. Now, for Mr. Dochemalo's appointment also is double-barreled. He's also head of communications. So definitely it means that there are people doing communications at the presidency. Now, he is their head. But he also now advises the president on matters of communication. And you see, last week, on this same panel, I think I was seated when Nana Komia is now, and I said, this government is a communications government. In fact, the government has proven me right. In the course of that same week, communications appointments have come. Now, why should the government be so fixated on communications? We have an ailing economy. We have several ailing sectors in this economy. Even, what do you call it, until last week, issues about whether senior high school students in the north could go to school on time was on the front burner. And then all kinds of payments and things have been done. But the government feels that it must communicate well. You see, so it is strengthening the communications leg of its standing. Now, Ben Dochemalo is a good friend of mine, accomplished gentleman. I mean, he's a fine gentleman. I do not have any problem with him at all. And I think even under the Office of President Act, we all know the president can appoint, even if the president wants to appoint a presidential advisor on Kitty, he can do it. If he wants to appoint a presidential advisor on Damba, he can do it. Nobody can say anything. But we run a democracy, so we are allowed.
Nobody can change it, but somebody can say something.
Oh, of course,
Yeah.
of course. But that is why, you see, our leaders should not take us for granted that we don't know what time it is. You see, I was talking to somebody yesterday, was it Kwekubak, when we came to a certain understanding that there's a product, you understand, and then there's a message, and then there's a team that puts out the product by way of the messages. So what product are we even looking at? Government. The government of President Mahama. And what message is being put out? That this is a government that is working for the people. Not so. Thematically. Or James, is it not a government that is supposed to be working for the people?
It's not supposed to. It is working for the people.
Okay. And then the team. James is part of the team. We have an information minister. He has 2 deputies. What is it that they have not been doing right? You understand? That will bring in an accomplished Ben Dochemalo to come and do. I see where possibly the president is coming from. And I without any fear, say it. You see, if you look at Honorable Amayaga, fine gentleman. I mean, when he stands or when he delivers, you know that this is a stable factor. Unfortunately, I cannot say so for his 2 deputies. I cannot say so. And so, long haul, it is becoming increasingly clear that there's a need for people with calm demeanor, people with respectability, people who can bring a certain level of calmness, grace under pressure to the way communications is done. The Rottweiler approach has failed. You unleash people, go on radio, insult, say this, equalize, and all of that. Where did it lead this government to?
You're not saying any of the information ministers have been insulting anybody on radio?
No. But why? I'm entitled to my opinion about the way certain things have been handled in the past. And I see where President Mahama sits. Is there a solution to now add on or say, listen, you are not accomplishing the task I want you to do for my government in communication. So just get out. Let's make some savings and bring Ben Dochemalo in and let him deliver. Because I know that he will deliver. I know he will deliver. But the mistake is the president not having, if you like, the courage to jettison those who he think are weak links in his communication setup and bringing in an accomplished person like Ben Dochemalo
who will come and do the work. You see, the road has been given to...
That's a serious one at the president. Just hold it there for me. Now, Nana, you've been in this business, in government before, you've been in the business out of government. What James had to say, that this is not new, and he's giving you examples of where this might be best practice. What's the problem?
Samson, this is a recipe for disaster. I mean, that's for what James said. I mean, he has to try and justify it. There's no problem with that. He was giving us examples from South Sudan.
Oh, seriously?
And then Nigeria, and Kenya, and South Africa. I mean, Ghana should be setting the pace, not following South Sudan. It's a recipe for disaster. And you don't need to look far. James, like the letter that you read, that the gentleman, Mr. Mallow, will be the senior communications advisor and head of communications. Indeed, the communications advisor to the government is the information minister. He sits in cabinet. And when there are matters of information communication, he is the one who's asked to bring a plan. So the information minister is the man or the woman in charge of information in the government. And the presidency is the center of government. So what you have done is that you have appointed another information minister.
This is for the presidency. And you are talking about the government.
The presidency is separate from
Samson,
the government.
The presidency is the center of government. The presidency is not a ministry of energy. The Ministry of Energy may have a spokesperson on energy. The Ministry of Sports may have a spokesperson on sports for the minister. But he just speaks on sports. Or she just speaks on energy. You see, the person in charge of information at the presidency speaks for government. It's a very simple matter. And you see, this structure that we've gone back to created problems in Rawlins's time, in Kufuor's time, in Mills's time, created problems. In Mills's time, we were all witnesses to the situation where even the communication team of the government was divided. And they played out their fight in public. The newspapers were divided. Somewhere in the castle group and somewhere in the information group. And they played out their fight in the newspapers and so on. We heard them. They attacked themselves. James is here. James knows. It's a result.
About, really.
Oh, James.
But go ahead. I think I'll have an opportunity
James,
to respond.
we were all here when the communication team of the NDC was fighting against themselves. They published articles in their own newspapers against some of them. We saw it. It was played out in public. So these are facts that really, if we're going to have an objective analysis, you must deal with. So when President John Mahama came, and he seemed to move away from that situation, all of us were happy. Indeed, the information minister, Mr. Ayariga, said something to that effect, that now we would have a unified structure. That's what Ayariga said. And so they were going to be communicating from the heart of government, the presidency. And so they instituted these daily briefs, which was all in order, which was all a departure from the past situation where you have an information minister and then you have somebody in charge of information at the presidency. Sadly, John Mahama seems to have gone back to the old system that inherently had problems.
He's not prohibited from doing so.
I'm saying to you, Samson, that the system that how it used to be had problems in Rawlins's time. It had problems in Kufuor's time.
That's your verdict?
No. We all knew it. It had problems. Some of them didn't come into the public. That's why I'm giving you the example of the one that came into the public domain. It had problems. Because you see, the presidency is the heart of government. Now you have an information minister. You have somebody in charge of information at the presidency. Who takes precedence? Because the man that you've put there is not this one put there. He's not even a press officer. He's the head. So who takes precedent? Who tells who what the line should be? Who tells who what the government communication line on an issue should be? Who tells who?
He tells the people, the communication persons at the presidency, what the presidency's communication line should be.
Who tells who?
Ben Dochema, because he's the senior and head.
But the spokesperson at the Ministry of Energy doesn't tell the Minister of Information what the communication line on energy should be. You see, he doesn't. If you are a spokesman for energy, that means you are in charge of information at the Ministry of Energy. You don't tell the information minister what the line on energy should be. So what you have created, and I'm saying to you that the examples of our recent past are there. They are there. And President Mahama, when he was Minister for Information and Communication, and there was a Castle Bureau, he was aware of the problems. And in Kufuor's time, he was aware of the problems. He was the director of communication for the NDC. He was aware of the tensions.
So your point is that there was a problem during President Kufuor's time?
Certainly. Okay. There were tensions because of the
structure. Make the point more frontal.
Ajeni Mbuati.
No, go ahead.
I have said, and everybody who wants to hear has said, I said that there were problems in Rawlings's time, in Kufuor's time, in Mills's time. But in Mills's time, the problems boiled to the surface. It doesn't mean that there were no tensions in Kufuor's time or Rawlings's time. There were. But in Mills's time, we all read the stories about them. Some of them are people have fired them, where they wrote stories against themselves. Because this person or these people belong. Oh, they were even going to go on strike. One wing was even going to go on strike, and it was a subject of media discussions. And then they would go to a radio station and they would ask them, are you a part of the strikers? And so on. Everybody would be laughing. And so it boiled to the surface because of the parallel structure. So when President Mahama came and they said we're going to have a unified structure, so there's a chain, a clear chain of command.
Those people you referred to, they were party communicators. They're not government communicators or communicators at the presidency.
Oh, what is Ajeni Mbuati doing? Is he a party communicator or a government communicator? You won't separate the two. So you had a structure that had created problems. You had a new government, a new president, who seemed to have moved away from that structure. And indeed, like I said, Ayariga himself issued a statement that said that we're now going to have a unified structure. Okay, so
let's wait for your vindication. You have prophesied that this is what they call it is disaster in waiting.
It's a disaster in waiting. The only saving grace that I can see is that, and this is just a speculation, that the personalities of the people involved, you look at Mahama Ayariga, his personality seems to me to be somebody who likes consensus building, consultation, not somebody who's going to say, hey, this is my turf, and what I'm saying is the one that goes. And then Ben Dochema also seems to have, I was in school with him. I haven't seen him in the last 10 years. But if I remember him from those days,
around the BBC and the United Nations.
He also seems to have a personality that will say, look, let me consult my colleague and let me get his take on this matter.
Right.
And so if you're going to have somebody who's going to behave like a bull in a China shop, that this is I'm the head of this place and this is what I say and this is what my people should go and say, you're going to have problems. Then we've seen it in this country.
Let's hear from the development policy analyst. From your perspective of your professional capacity, do you see this sort of arrangement within the presidency vis-a-vis that of the information ministry? There are also comments from the Media Foundation for West Africa saying we also have the information departments in every region or district, so to speak. And so all of this is quite not good. First of all, you are draining the tax, the purse a lot more, and so you don't need all of that. What do you say from a professional perspective?
Yeah, thank you so much. This vexed issue of Dochemalo's appointment, I think should not take so much of a hassle from discussants, because if you look at the whole setup, of government. The government is made up of three arms, as has been said. You have various arms of legislature, judiciary, and then you have the executive. The president is supposed to be the head of the executive arm of government. And the Minister of Information, and for that matter, the Ministry of Information, has statutory roles. The Information Service Department falls directly.
Statutory rules?
Yeah. There are roles that...
when you say statutory rules, you are suggesting as if it is a creation of law. It is not.
Yeah, for instance, the law creates an Information Service Department under the Ministry of Information. And the Ministry of Information is supposed to execute information activities of government, and not just of government, in fact, of the state, through these established structures. So those functions are clearly delineated and clearly earmarked. And if I were to actually look at what is about to happen and what might happen, is the introduction of development communication into the government communication strategy. And that will be looking at the Ministry of Information solely using appropriate tools to communicate out strategies of the state to actually harness the support of the general public towards certain set goals. So, for instance, the whole issue of corruption is a major issue that we're talking about. Now, the president has taken some lead steps, and the Ministry of Information will be required through the Information Service Department and its agencies in the regions and district supposed to develop tools, behavioral change tools that would help the state to actually, bring the psyche of the people that this is the lead.
And then the communications outfit at the presidency.
Now, that's right. Now, the communications outfit of the presidency, and if you look at the terminology given to this appointment, advisor,
communications advisor and head.
Now, you realize that the president, as been said, is himself a communications person. He does a lot of communication work. He talks for the executive. He talks for the government in some instances. And I think that his speech and his communication around ought to be based on scientific advice. I think, among other things, that this particular directorate and the advisory role that this man would be required to play would be to introduce evidence-based strategic communication at the presidency. And that would mean that he would be supervising over a team that would not just come out and advise the president to talk on a particular issue, but any issue that will be spoken about will be based on credible research.
Nana Kumia says the presidency is the center, is the heart of government.
No,
what are you talking about?
No, I'm saying that
two entities going to be dealing with different information at the same time?
Yeah. You see, for instance, I would like to make some clarity here. I mean, everything is clear that the president is the head of executive arm of government, and there are other arms of the government. We would actually be creating confusion if we try to portray out there that the president is heading the entire government machinery, even though the executive is very strong and we are running an executive, presidency. But it does not mean that the president is the entire head of the government. There are various heads of other arms of government.
Please.
Can I just...
Let me finish. The president is the government.
I'm coming. Let me finish.
Everybody else is his appointee.
Let me finish.
This is a very simple point.
The main thing is that
president is
I'm coming. No, let me finish. The president is not head of government.
The information ministry or that outfit in the presidency certainly cannot be talking about matters regarding parliament or the judiciary. So
no. What I'm saying is that
I was showing you that it's very clear.
No, it's not. You see, the thing is that in as much as we try to, present that the presidency is the government in this particular issue, we should be mindful of not creating confusion out there and to let people understand that there are clear delineations between the various arms of government, and the presidency is just an arm, even though it might be the strongest arm because it has certain functions based on our constitution. But the role of the advisor, as I said, can be clearly different from that of the Minister of Information. And the Minister of Information, if they are to introduce the development communication model that is being, discussed within the corridors of power, then the Minister of Information would be solely responsible for developing tools of communication that will be targeted at
I'll take a final comment from James Ejenim Boateng. We'll move on to other bigger substantive issues about JIDA and corruption, and then move on to the biggest opposition's elections that are going on today. Now, I'll let you know that this show is brought to you by the kind sponsorship of MTN everywhere you go. Now, keep your conversations going with MTN and to SWO. Now, each time you top up with your any MTN recharge voucher, you get 3 minutes to enjoy longer conversations, no subscriptions required, no long things. Just top up today and enjoy your 3 minutes on the go with MTN into SWO. Your bonus minutes can be used for MTN to MTN calls only. So go on, keep the conversations going. Welcome to the new world. MTN, everywhere you go. Star Assurance, they are your CIMG General Insurance Company of the year 2012, and they continue to give you the very best of insurance products. Of course, they are also top there on the Ghana Club 100 rankings in 2012. Their dedicated team is dedicating itself to offering you cutting-edge insurance policies that give you peace of mind and power to achieve your set goals. Talk to them at 0302-240-632, or you visit them at starassurance.com. Star Assurance, that's your solid partner. And Errata Motors, if you're looking for a new or slightly used car, you certainly should try Errata Motors. They have brand new or slightly used, as I said, in Mercedes-Benz, Toyota, Infiniti, Range Rover, you name it. They will deliver it to you. Go to Errata Motors at Lagos Avenue, opposite Body Talk, near GT Bank, East Legon. Call them 0244-445-268 or 0277-486-800. You can also call that particular line or visit them personally, and they'll give you their best product. Errata Motors, that's your best vehicles at the best prices. This show is also brought to you by Lipton Tea. That is inspiration flowing from nature. Now, I get to you, like I said, I give you the very final word on this, and do it very quickly. Unfortunately, you see, on the show, you don't get to exhaust everything that you have. Otherwise, we'll take about 2 hours discussing just one issue or listening to one person. Now, James.
Thank you. I've had difficulty appreciating some of the issues raised. It appears that people people see trouble even when there is no trouble. Is that what they call doomsday prophecy? Well, for me, and again, I think on this program an impression has been created as though this appointment itself is a verdict of the performance of the information ministry. I don't think so. I mean, we have an information ministry performing the traditional roles of the information ministry plus additional functions. I mean, till such time that His Excellency the President found, whoever he wanted to be in charge of his communications. I think that we need to separate the issue. The issue of communicating on behalf of the entire government, and by government here, I mean the ministries, departments, and agencies, and the presidency. These are two separate but overlapping issues. Well, I mean, it's revealing to hear Nana Komia, Honorable Minister for Information, sit on this program for the first time, tell the good people of Ghana that whilst he was Information Minister and there was a spokesperson at the presidency, he has had his challenge. Maybe there were. I only served in the capacity of a deputy minister. I did not notice any such problems with the system. But Nana said at a higher level, who am I to say that there was no problem if the information minister says that at his time, when there was also a spokesperson at the presidency, they have had their clashes and they have had their issues. I think that when you have work to do, you keep your eyes on the ball. I mean, you have clear deliverables. I mean, you don't need to, for example, eat from the same bowl in order to work together. Yes, a certain section in charge of communicating on behalf of government. You focus on that, you deliver that. Because particularly in jurisdictions
that reaction to Egbert he's saying in essence, if it's not broken, you don't fix it. So if they are communicating, they have been communicating so well, what's the problem?
But the senior counsel was the first person to also point out and to admit that we have an executive president who does as he sees.
Even at great cost to the people.
I don't see what you mean by great cost to the
remove
people.
Those who have to be removed.
No. You know, again, I think that counsel, your attack on the two deputies was most unfair, because this you are alluding to Rottweiler communication and all of that, and saying that. Well, I mean, I think I think that
you think
again,
that
we need to make an admission.
The president will be justified.
We need to make an admission.
The president will be justified, or can still look Ghanaians in the face and say, look, the executive pay, the people you are paying, or the civil service is taking so much of what we earn?
I really don't see the numbers thing. I mean, with respect to communication, really? The numbers thing with respect to the communication setup doesn't add up at all. We're talking about one environment where you have a spokesperson at the presidency, a minister, two deputy ministers, special assistants, spokespersons for various sectors. And what is it that we are talking about? I mean, clearly, I don't see it. But in all of this, we also need to make an admission. Communications at the presidency is not a one-man business. You know, communication for government is not a one-man business. I think that there is really no problem with this.
Thank you very much, James Ejenim Boateng. And this message says that it's from Kwame, and he says Nana Kumia will be proved right unless there is a clear delineation and streamlining of roles and accountabilities, with job descriptions reviewed and realigned for all the players on the government's communication staff list. The number of deputy ministers must also be reduced. And he, for example, says that Standogwe must give way. And it comes back to the issue that Egbert, was speaking to, and sought to take a swipe at the president, that he didn't seem to have the courage to jettison those that he felt were not doing well.
What reason does a person give for Standogwe giving way?
Well, he spoke about the need to delineate and
a person probably doesn't like that.
Thank you very much. You're still here on Newsfile on Joy 99.7 FM. This is your Joy News channel on Multi-TV. And Akumia, I give you just 30 seconds to make that point.
And Ejenim Boateng said he didn't know of any problems because he was a deputy minister. Well, but you see, those clashes and fights that they had were played out in the public domain. I am not part of the NDC communication team or even the government, but I knew of it because they were fighting in radio stations, in television stations, in the press. They were fighting against each other, and everybody knows this. Next time, I'll bring you copies of those articles they wrote. Ejenim Boateng, I'm sure you wrote some of them. He's laughing. But you see, something. We all say that President Mahama is a good communicator. So he should not be the president who's loading his government with communicators. If there was a president who
you should be telling me something new. I give you 30 seconds.
Yes, I'm telling you something new. That John Mahama, is a very good communicator. We all agree. So I don't think he should be packing his government with all these lines of communication and parallel structures. The last point I'm making is that this senior advisor, it doesn't seem to be a line position. Head of communications is a line position. That he is the head of the activity. So even there's confusion.
No. Thank you, Nana Akumia. Why do you say no?
Yeah, you see, the senior advisor role is an administrative role. It's like a position like senior medical officer, like senior, legal officer. Those kind of things. It's a role that somebody fits in.
Thank you.
Something.
We take a break here. We'll be right back to talk about JIDA and the criminal prosecutions.
Yes, the big one.
Welcome back. This is Newsfile, your most authoritative news analysis show. Osei Wayo in New Jersey writes, the best PR for government is his ability to deliver. Kasa. Spike in Ohio, in the USA, says that Doche Malo's appointment is superfluous and James should stop pretending. It's a mere waste of the taxpayers' money, period. Jerry Amponsa writes from New York. Ghanaians seriously feel disappointed by the John Mahama-led NDC government. 2016 will be a year of run for your dear life for Ghanaians. Don't get the association of your message to the topic. Please do exactly that. Kofi A. Boateng, Ayedriase in Kumasi says, Ejenim Boateng insists there is a rule for everyone, quote unquote. Of course, when you give a child a hammer, anything he finds is a nail. They have our hard-earned financial resources, so they don't have a problem wasting it. Time will tell. And a final one from Kwame Busumru says, it seems to me that duplication of roles and duplicitous do not have the same meaning. James, duplicitous has the idea of being deceptive. Thank you, Englishman. Now, let's move to the Attorney General's Department and JIDA. As you are aware, two people have been put before courts, and they are Abuga Pele, who was national coordinator of the program at the time, sometime in 2009, I suppose, right? And then a gentleman who is the brain behind Goodwill International, one of the service providers. His name is Philip Asibit. They have been put before court, charged with not one, not two, not three, but 19 counts. How are they going to escape all of these charges? And I just want to try and just quickly run through some of the charges for you. First, the charge sheet in respect of Philip Apena Asibit. His count one, that he defrauded the state by false pretenses contrary to the law. And the statement says that between April and May 2011 in Accra, with intent to defraud and obtain the with intent to defraud, did obtain the consent of the government of Ghana to part with an amount of 826,153 Ghana cedis, 64 pesos, by representing that he had rendered consultancy services to the NYEP by securing a World Bank funding of $65 million for the implementation of the Youth Enterprise Development Program, recruited 250 youth to support the implementation of that program, and had also developed and facilitated the launch of an effective basically, so that's the point, that because he had represented to the government that he was the brain behind the money from the World Bank, which is 65 million United States dollars, and because of that consultancy that he provided, he was entitled to 826,000 Ghana cedis, and that was paid. So that is his first charge, and there are several other charges that follow. And then you come to Abuga Pele, who was the coordinator of the program at the time, and he it said that between April 2011 and May 2012 in Accra, he did a bet. That's just a minor part of his charge. There's one about him that is a major that I just want to look at quickly and let you have. It says, among other things, that he gave out this particular job to this gentleman without recourse to the minister at the time and without approval by the government. So this is where he comes in the whole process. So he has abetted that particular crime. He is the reason all of that money has gone waste. Now, I start with Egbert, and my question is, you see an Attorney General appearing to be putting out a very spirited fight to get to get punishment, as it were, for those who may have done something wrong in the Jeddah situation. Is that the case?
Oh, yes. I think that the Attorney General and her deputy, Dr. Ayini, I think that they are on course. This is something that every normal Ghanaian would expect will be done. And I'm happy that it is being done. I'm not happy because some people have been charged, but I'm just happy that justice is going to be done. Because in all criminal prosecutions, we say, as lawyers, that we look for justice in all criminal prosecutions for the state, for the victim, and also for the accused person. So it may well be also that at the end of this matter, the state will be found not to have had a case at all, and the accused persons will be acquitted and discharged. So
I must add that the accused persons pleaded not guilty to the charges, and they have been granted bail.
Yes, but let me say that for me, from a purely political standpoint, this matter is very interesting. Let me tell you why I think it is interesting. That a government of the NDC all of a sudden is using the law on causing financial loss. This law was used by the Kufuor administration, and our friends in the NDC went, they hit the roof. Not forgetting that this law was passed by the first parliament, or is it the second parliament, of the Fourth Republic. We've also seen the various battles that have gone on in court with regards to the constitutionality or otherwise of this law. Finally, it has come to full circle that the very government that passed this law, but that never used it, and when it was used by the Kufuor administration, they felt that it was for victimization, has now come home to the fact that it is a relevant law that ought to be used. Of another importance to me personally is the fact that sitting MPs can be charged. You remember when Honorable Dan Abudakwi was charged under the Kufuor administration? We have people, some of them high up in parliament today, said no, the Kufuor administration had used the system to haul an MP before court, separation of powers, blah, 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 blah. Honorable Abuga Pele is a member of parliament on the ticket of the NDC. He's been brought before court by the NDC administration. But, let us sometimes when matters happen in this country, let us take away the political coloration, lenses. And let's look at the end, because no charge sheet, this charge sheet that you are reading, has anybody been described there that for you, that being a member of the NDC, or being so-and-so, or being a member of the MPP or CPP or so, there's nothing political there. It is the role that people are alleged to have played that has actuated the kind of charge sheet that we have. People belong to families, people belong to groups, people belong to political parties. That is fine. But when people act alone, or even in concert, and legal standards are set for them to be brought in, let it be so. But you see, my surprise.
The reference you are making, were there concerns about the law or how it was being applied?
Their concerns were about the law and also how it was being applied. The financial.
No, I thought it was about how it was being applied.
Of course. But that is because we have an Attorney General. The Constitution mandates only the Attorney General to initiate, conduct criminal prosecutions. Until that is changed, what can you do? There's nothing. An Attorney General is the only ministerial rule that is spelled out in the Constitution, pursuant to Article 88. Now also, I am surprised. And I said this, without judging any of these matters. But I saw the fact that you are reading. Somebody says that he has obtained a UN, World Bank contract, blah, 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 blah.
He provided consultancy services that led to the 65 million being given to the country.
The facts are similar to the Salome case. If you remember, some Silicon Valley kind of project, Dr. Buedu, Libda, and when you just read that, I was like, this is not a similar case we are seeing. You see, I think that our public officers, maybe the Attorney General, should do some kind of information jacket for public servants, not only ministers. That this is a case that has happened in Ghana. In plain speak form, you understand? That if you are approached by anybody who says so and so, always remember that once upon a time, something like this happened. So when people come and make claims requiring of you to approve and make payments from the consolidated fund or public purse, please be mindful that this is where it can land you. You see, we don't leave these things standing just because, what do you call it, ignorance of the law is no excuse. No, we ought to also raise the red flags earlier. We don't have to always be reactive. We should be proactive a lot of the times. And how public servants keep their eye on the ball before they do anything. People went to jail, you know, because they gave loans without parliamentary approval. What have we done about it? To let public officers know that you cannot give a loan in this country, whether to your mother, your father, or anybody, without parliament approving it. We need to let you see. So maybe Bendo Chemalo will start, you know, disseminating communication and information about some of these things. Oh no, this is
so in general, speaking legally, the charges are basically defrauding by false pretenses, causing dishonestly causing willfully causing financial loss to the state, also abetting of that same crime. You find that this certainly is the way to go. Questioning is being asked is that this is a criminal trial. Will it bring the money?
Yeah, so I was also going to say that currently before the law courts is the Woyome matter. Mr. Woyome is facing contemporaneous hearings. There's a civil matter where the state is seeking to recover the money, and there's a criminal matter. So I would want to see the Attorney General also, if these monies indeed were paid, then action should straight away be initiated with regard to the civil remit to ensure that, you know, those monies are recouped. In any event, oftentimes the criminal jurisprudence also allows a court, apart from convicting and sentencing an accused person after a trial, to also make consequential orders that those sums of money should be paid. And I know that in the Salome case, if I recall rightly, those orders were made, but were they ever paid? And then so sometimes if you have a judge who in the course of sentencing also forgets, that is that. So I think that to make assurance doubly sure, as we all say in everyday street lingo, I'm challenging the Attorney General, and I know that her office and team are up to it. They should institute civil proceedings as well, so that these two run side by side. It's happening in the Woyome case. It should happen here too.
We have sat in this studio,
big money,
and there have been calls from people, including yourself, that the prosecutions should start. You were eagerly looking forward to the prosecutions and seemed to suggesting that they were delaying. Now, you're happy something is happening?
Before I do that, I'll pose a question to you on this, just to concentrate your mind on this communications you were talking about. Because you see, the confusion is that we are talking about communications. That's why I'm posing you the question. Can you imagine if the presidency had a senior advisor on economic policy and also the head of economic policy at the presidency? Can you imagine?
Proceed.
Now, so keep that in mind. Now, this JIDA matter, like you said, all of us were not satisfied with what was going on. The public were outraged when the revelations about JIDA started coming. There was a huge public shock at the scale of the rot, especially when you had this, it's coming on the heels of this judgment debts, which had been described by one Supreme Court judge as a system to create, to loot and share taxpayers' money. So coming on the heels of those judgment debts, which we still don't have any understanding how those things occurred, the public was shocked at the scale of the rot at JIDA. Now, you look at the report, the official report that has come out, and you are being told that a situation where a finance director of a ministry was the finance director for the JIDA project, and the accountant of a ministry was also the accountant of the JIDA project. So immediately you can see that these are experienced civil servants, well versed in the laws regarding financial administration. Now that system is replaced, and somebody who, according to the report, has no serious qualification in finance is brought in as director of finance. Immediately you can see that there is some collusion going on. And then you find out that a system where a bank, a national bank, the Agric Development Bank, had been contracted to provide credit at prevailing interest rates to the program. It is replaced And a private company with no record in finance is brought in to provide a credit at 100% interest a month. This is the conclusion of the official report. We have a situation where we are being told that private companies are contracted to train 15,000. They train 4,000. And yet the entire amount for training 15,000 is paid to them. That people are contracted to train 23,000.
In this particular situation with the Goodwill International, we are talking about money that was received from the World Bank. That is 65 million United States dollars. He received consultation in excess of 3 million Ghana cedis, or about almost $2
million.
Yes, $2 million, plus an additional of the 835 Ghana cedis that I speak about. This one, the money was hard, and then his consultancy was paid. But the issue is that Abuga Pele did that without recourse to Kwiasena Danswa, who was the minister then, or for the necessary approval that ought to have been received.
That is not my reading of the reports. I mean, if the man had been contracted to provide services that will bring $65 million, he's not going to provide those services for free. So if those $65 million came and the man gets his 5%, I don't think there would have been any problem. The problem is that the money never came. The $65 million supposed to be from the World Bank, for which somebody had been contracted to facilitate, that money never came. And yet, that person was paid the $2 million. That's why we have a problem. So my reading is different.
Right.
So like I'm saying, you have this huge public shock, and then it looked like the government was being dragged at every turn to take action. It took Joy Manasseh, one of your reporters, and that young man deserves all the commendation we can give to him. It took him and your station providing the platform to bring the kind of pressure that got the government to act. And then they appointed a committee. The committee brought its report. 6 months, 7 months. They said the presidency had appointed somebody else to review. Public pressure kept mounting because of the scale of the rot. And then eventually, now we are being told that somebody is going to be prosecuted. For me, every step of the way, the government has to be pushed, to be dragged, for public anger to be expressed for several months before a small step is taken. Yeah, and to add to that, they were making excuses. They were telling us, there's no law about JIDA, there were no systems in place. It's like the government was making excuses for the rot. Now you take the Abuga Pele case, for example. The charges that you read, you said that Abuga Pele didn't have approval from a minister before. How can Abuga Pele cause the payment of $2 million to an individual? Because the JIDA hasn't got that money. How? So it is much, much, much bigger than Abuga Pele. How can the JIDA cause the granting of loan to a private company amounting to 50,000 Ghana? JIDA hasn't gotten that money. So it goes way, way beyond the coordinator of JIDA or everybody else. Because Abuga Pele, we are being told that he didn't have ministerial approval. So who paid the money? Because he has to write a contract that has to be processed through the system for it to be paid by the Ministry of Finance.
So the substance of the charge is about signing the MOU without recourse to the minister or the normal approval as was expected.
But if the money had not been paid, there wouldn't have been any financial loss. So the problem is that the monies were paid. That's why there's financial loss. And I'm saying that, like we have been told by the charges that you just read, I haven't seen them. I'll get a copy from you with your kindness. But if there was no ministerial approval, how did it go through the system for the monies to be paid?
James, serious. Certainly, you would want to be careful about commenting on the merits of the case now, because now it is properly before a law court that is seized with the power to determine whether someone is guilty or not. But when you hear, when the prosecution presents the case and says that their investigations reveal that this $65 million that this particular Goodwill International, service provider is said to have provided consultancy services for which it was paid those sums of monies, about 2 million, and then subsequently about 800 plus Ghana cedis. That the World Bank, indeed and in fact, never approved any such facility for this country. What goes through your mind when you hear some of these, the revelations coming from the Attorney General?
Something, thank you. Let me start off by saying that I think that all of us ought to make an admission. JIDA, or is it NYEP as it then was fraught with own problems. I believe that these problems perhaps predating when Nana used to be the Nana Kumia as minister with oversight responsibility. Part of the issues boiled down, and Nana Kumia just alluded to that, the fact that it was not hinged on any specific law, but the intention for me was a brilliant thing, to address the numerous problems confronting young, unemployed people. You give them a respite of some 2 years so that they can move on to other things and all of that. It appears that, in the wake of all of these issues, and I'm not sure that the president had at any point been pushed before he had acted. It appears that, if you look at the whole JIDA issue very well, it appears that all the issues we are talking about right now in terms of who advanced the loan, who implemented what model, who brought what, how many people were supposed to be trained, how many people were not trained, and yet payments were done, all of that seems to boil down to institutional weakness, a lack of capacity in terms of human capital, the caliber of people
Restrict yourself to this. What is the institutional weakness you talk about in respect of an entity which is paid consultancy fees of about $2 million plus 800 and something Ghana cedis, and yet the World Bank has not approved any $65 million it says it's rendered services and got the money for the country?
It comes back to the institutional weakness. It comes back to the institutional weakness. It comes back to the caliber or the human capital. Look, if, for example, if you look at some of the models which were rolled out, it is obvious that the operators of the models, at the negotiating tables, were bringing their best crop of people to the table. They were bringing some of the finest lawyers. I don't know if we can say same for the part of JIDA in terms of doing due diligence and doing the scrutiny. Clearly, there are issues, and we've got to confront the issue and be frank about it. For me, it's not so much about the issue, it's about what is being done about the issue. Because I say all the time that, when you give people decisions, what do you do about it? And I think that President Mahama, in all of this, has acted the way that a president ought to act. He's shown that he has the muzzle to bring a closure to this issue and to make sure that those who have circumvented the process, those who have failed to act, in line with what is expected of them, are brought before the courts. Previously, what were we hearing? We're hearing critics talking about how the president is not acting and the people who are involved are walking free men. I say that, I can understand that kind of frustration, particularly as we have a recent history, only some 20 years or so, of military rule. I think that the processes are shorter. You just don't like Egbert's notes and you can just lock him up and that's it. But today, you lock him up and you have 1,001 lawyers telling you that you are acting outside the law. For me, the problems, the weaknesses have been identified. today, for example, we can talk about
mentioning another aspect that the criminal prosecution may or may not
I have no objection
end
to
up getting the retrieval of the money. So what ought to be done is that you have criminal and civil side by side at the same time.
I am sure that as lawyers we have no objection to that. Those are matters left for the Attorney General's department to do. At this point, they may be privy to some information.
Will you be surprised if the government does not do that? And in the end, if it happened that the court found them guilty, there will not be any money to take.
That's a hypothetical situation. I don't like to deal with that. I think that the AG's department, I mean, the investigations have been done. The IOCO has looked into the matter. A docket has been built at this point. In fact,
they are bringing up more. We are going to learn about more in the coming weeks.
At this point, clearly we have some accused persons before the court. I mean, they will have their day in court, which is what due process requires. That, I mean, a certain case has been made against you. They appear before the court to explain themselves, to plead, and to explain and offer defense. If the court thinks that, I mean, those defenses are no defense in law, the court will do what it has to do. But I think that it comes back to the issue of what people is, can the president act or can the president not act? The president has shown that he's not only getting JIDA restructured. We have somebody now, I mean, Kobe Achampong, who is in charge of restructuring. The Attorney General's department has
considering a bill for
the JIDA bill, which is also being drafted, and all of that. I mean, so I think that clearly we are on the right path. I can understand the frustrations and all of that of people about what supposedly people who have done wrong and they are working as free men. But in a constitutional dispensation, I think that people ought to go through due process, and that's exactly what has been done. But quite apart from that, there's also the issue about some loans which were advanced to people without, again, going through due process. I've heard people say, why are those people who access the loans themselves working as free men? What I do know is that retrievals are being done, repayments are being done. So clearly you can see that all the measures outlined by the president when he spoke to these JIDA issues are being followed.
And you're satisfied with the process
so far? They are being followed through. I think that if anybody has acted in flagrant disregard of the laws of the Republic of Ghana, nobody is bigger than
now. Dr. Zakaria, I come to you and listening to the legal aspect that they bring to bear, Egbert and James, both of them are lawyers, bring to bear on the issue. Will you be surprised if there is not another leg, which is the civil process, which is directly to ask for this money to be paid back into government chest? The money that is alleged to have been paid without any work being done. Because the suspicion is that politicians can do anything, and they may want to just go ahead with a criminal prosecution, and in the end, you know, something may happen without any money coming back to the Ghanaian.
Yeah, thank you so much. With the issue of JIDA, I really look at it as a model, as a test case to try to see how committed the president, the government is, you know, to the fight against corruption. I think that looking at the processes that it has come through from the beginning, I've seen a clear, you know, deliberate move by the president, the government, to try and understand what the problems are at JIDA. You realize that at the regional levels, a number of investigations had gone on, and a number of findings had been, you know, uncovered, and then it moved to national level at sub-ministerial level committees were done, and then some findings were made.
Yeah, we have done this over and again.
Yeah.
I wanted you to move to the specific.
Yeah. So, no, the reason, you see, I'm trying to draw attention to a particular thing, you know, from a developmental point of view. And I'm thinking that for all of us, as a people, corruption has been something that we have spoken about, we have talked about a lot, and we see it as a real canker. And I tell you,
the president calls it mass murder.
That's right. And you know, we've had programs to deal with, you know, cankers, like we have a national AIDS program. We have several programs, and I think that as a country, we should be looking at a program to, you know, to fight against corruption. And I'm saying that
the laws are there.
The laws are fine. That like you were just saying. So that's tied into the discussion. The legal aspects are going on, and people might be punished. People will be punished. At least the process have started, and we are looking at the aspect of getting the money back. That may be legal, or that can also be negotiated by the team. They can decide that, okay, I mean, we understand that some monies were lost.
We're looking at this
government.
specific case.
So this specific case, for instance, I'm thinking that there are two ways that this thing can go. Whilst the criminal investigation or criminal process is going on in court, we can have a discussion with them to be able to see if they would pay the money back to government.
And they say they are not guilty of
if they are not guilty
of the allegations you make against
them.
Then
clearly
they should be accepting to pay.
No, then clearly civil. Like you're saying, there's a criminal component, there's a civil component. They may say that they didn't do any criminal, they are not liable criminally. They might agree that I took the money that I was not supposed to take, but I didn't take it illegally. So where's the money? So I agree I can bring back the money. But indeed, even though I took the money, they are not arguing that he didn't take the money. But he's saying that he didn't go against the laws of the country in taking the money. Now, if the monies were not used for what they were supposed to,
so if they are found not to be guilty of these charges, you can't go and ask them for money.
As you are aware, the standards, when it comes to criminal cases are not the same as when it comes to, civil cases. So they might be able to survive.
In criminal cases, it's proof beyond doubt.
That's
in
right.
Civil cases, it's probability.
That's right.
Preponderance of probability.
Yeah. So clearly, you see that these two standards are not the same, and they might survive under a criminal case.
One is difficult.
Yeah, one is more difficult than the other.
To prove that is criminal.
That's right. So in that vein, they could survive in the criminal case, and they could get convicted under the civil case for them to refund. But in all, what I'm trying to draw people's attention to is that as a group, we must just understand and recognize that there is a clear demonstration of commitment to fighting corruption using the Jida case as a test case, and that the media and the information ministry, for that matter as well, should lead the change, the psychic change of the people, to try to educate the people, to let them understand that now there is a leadership, that has been provided in fighting against corruption. Everybody needs to come on board. The public service, the people, mindset, everybody. And we can harness the public perception and move an agenda towards addressing a corruption canker that is, confronting us. If we take partisan positions and try to say that, this action is short of that, this action is short of this, we might lose the target, because the target for each body, whether you are an independent body
Ghanaian people have their skepticism because they know how the politics can be played.
So whatever the skepticism it is in the system, now we see that legal processes have started. Earlier, certain measures had been initiated to retrieve monies from other people. Now, what do we have to do as a body? What is our contribution? What role are we going to play in trying to help the country succeed in the fight against corruption? And I think we need a mind change. We need a behavioral change. And that thing cannot happen spontaneously. It has to be engineered. And to engineer it, we need everybody on board.
Okay.
And we need
I'm now going to take a minute. I'm now going
measures.
to take a minute from all of you. What are your expectations in the coming weeks and days and weeks? We're told we're going to have a lot more of these coming out. Nana, start with you. What are your expectations?
Well, like I said, it looks like the government is being pushed and dragged every step of the way.
It had told you earlier that it has a systematic program, and you didn't trust it.
Well, I have said to you that they were also making statements that appear to be defending the rots. Even as we sit here, is repeating some of those statements, that there were no laws, and there was no system, there was no capacity. So the person who is arrested now can go and say that, well, but the government itself knows that there was no law and there was no system. Wow. So what I expect is that the momentum will be maintained. The momentum will be maintained. Because the monies that we are talking about in such a poor country are just too much.
The momentum should be maintained.
Yeah.
And the excuses should end.
Yeah. With the approach.
But we are in first girl.
With the approach that is being used.
Your expectations?
Yeah. My clear expectations are that everybody, all political parties, all groupings should rally behind the state to deal with corruption. I think that there is clear evidence to show that there is commitment. And I think with what Nana is saying, there are two legs in dealing with the thing. They are talking about administrative restructuring that will be required to ensure that it will be difficult for people to, take advantage of the system, which is supposed to be preventive. And there's also a curative arm, which is looking at, those who have already taken advantage of the system, notwithstanding the fact that these systems were not in place. They're not supposed to go scot-free.
Right.
They are supposed to be, penalized.
Thank you very much.
I take, such media engagement seriously. So I've sat here and I've told the good people of Ghana what the facts are. Nana Kumia was a minister with oversight responsibility. If he doubts that there was any, if he says that there was no legal, if he doubts the point about that, he should tell Ghanaians the very law upon which it was hinged. For me, I think that, the president has acted in a manner that if we had President Kufuor acting just a quarter of that, we would not have been where we are. After all, President Kufuor looked us in the face and told us that he wasn't going to fight corruption the way.
Those are your expectations.
Because he was going to collapse. He was going to collapse his government that which led him to forming the Office of Accountability. That if they found something wrong, they call you into an inner room and say that why did you do that? Don't do that.
Are you going to be part of Malos
and all of that? I think that so for me, I think that the president has acted in a manner that is proper and fitting. When we look at all of these things, the abrogation of the contract and where we are, he's shown that he has a muscle to fight corruption. He's indeed a true anti-corruption campaigner, and he's acting as such.
You see, and just before that, I need to point out something briefly. You would find that in one of the counts, they are actually in respect of in one of the counts, they are referring to the Public Protection Act.
Yeah.
And in that one, when you are found to have misapplied the money, there is room for restitution.
Yeah. Yep. No problem. You see, I'm surprised. My friend James Ejeni Mbati. You see, when you are presented with a smoking gun, what can you do? Manasseh Azure brought evidence to the face of the president.
No. That's what.
That this rot has been going on under your watch. And the president asked and he said we should applaud him. I would have applauded the president if on his own steam he had one morning issued a statement or broadcast to the nation that, look, it has just come to my attention from my own investigations that
from the president's own investigation.
Yes.
But if you follow the story,
can I finish? I didn't make any intervention. When I finish, you can talk. You see, the president doesn't deserve any commendation for this. James is his appointee, so you applaud him.
Right.
But me, as a taxpaying Ghanaian, I will not applaud the president. When you have been presented with a smoking gun, you cannot but comply.
All right.
And the real McCoy and the real person who should be commended is Manasseh Azure. And then number two, you see,
expectation.
Yes, Nana Kumia raised a very fantastic point which has escaped all of us. And I will ask that the AG looks at that thing very well. That in the 21st century in this republic called Ghana, a memorandum of understanding, MOU, resulted in the payment of monies. My understanding of MOUs is that it is an expression of intent.
Right.
And beyond that, a contract is executed. And so which cabinet sat that 826,000 Ghana cedis left the national kitty under the hand of the finance minister when cabinet had not discussed it? How much money had been released for the payment of the feeding allowances of our brothers and sisters, younger brothers who in schools in the north? It's about 500,000 Ghana.
Okay, we're doing your time.
826,000 has been discharged from the consolidated fund, and cabinet didn't see it and asked the relevant questions.
Thank you, Egbert.
Check that someone bought it.
Thank you, Egbert.
How that case even came about? Because the vouchers kept going and coming, and just one person said, "Wait, let's do value for whatever."
Thank you. If you watch Manasseh Azure's report, he constantly refers to investigative reports that had been instituted.
Wait. Investigations were all started. You can play the report. Investigations had been started. Investigations had been started. Investigations had been started, completed, and they were not implemented.
Yeah, that's why.
Hold on. Thank you. But Egbert is saying, and we have gone on that point.
You can check.
These were recommendations that were sitting on the desk of national security and other people, and they were not being implemented. It took the media to bring them to the light of the public, to bring the pressure. Thank you very much. There were investigations that are not being answered upon. What's your problem?
No, that one I agree with.
Thank you very much. Now let's talk about confusing them. Now from Dr. Kweku, let's take this message. This message from Dr. Kweku Asare. And you may know him. He's been at the Supreme Court a few times to fight on certain issues in the interest of the Republic. He's in the United States of America. He says, how can Mr. Asibit, that's a Goodwill International guy, claim to have engineered a World Bank loan without being flagged by the Ministry of Finance, Bank of Ghana, Accountant General, and the Flagstaff House? It's either Mr. Asibit is a magician or government is completely inept. So back to James Ejenim's issues of
I think the latter option
institutions.
is
Institutional failures. Now, this very limited time, how do we deal with it? Now, I'll start with you on this. Jake was interviewed. Jake Obechebe Lamte, who is the national chairman of your party, was interviewed because Kwame Osei Prempeh, who is standing for the regional chairmanship in the Ashanti region, had complained that people, were throwing money at the delegates. There's this chairman, Wuntumi, who donated a story building to the party at this very point in time.
He paid
and he
rent.
said,
He paid
yes, right. And he's saying that this is seeking to compromise the purity of the process. And Jake said, look, that's the way he can help the party. Why begrudge him?
Well, there is a thin line between the positions that we are talking about, the use of money. There's a very thin line. But I cannot for one single second imagine that the chairman of the NPP, Jacob Lamte, is saying that if you have money, go and use it to bribe delegates. How?
He says money can be his gifts.
Exactly. That's what I'm coming. But
just as someone will be very good at communicating.
So it cannot be that Jacob Lamte is saying that if you have money, use it to bribe delegates. He couldn't have been saying that. Now he's saying that if you have gifts and you are engaged in an enterprise, whether it's elections, you use the gifts. If you are an effective organizer and you are going to stand for elections, you would use your organizing skills. You would probably use it to mobilize young people to clean the streets or to engage in some literacy
2016, program. The NPP will not have problems with government or the NDC using gifts in the election process.
I'm saying to you that if you have gifts, the chairman says if you have gifts, use the gifts in a legitimate manner.
I ask you a direct question.
So if you have organizing skills, you wouldn't use the organizing skills to organize
answer my question. 2016 elections. You won't have a problem with the NDC using gifts.
Legitimately. That you are a lawyer. Legitimately. If the NDC as an incumbent government was using monies to do things that improve welfare, what will have a problem? You would say that, they are taking advantage, but it is fair. But if they were using money to bribe people, then of course it would be illegitimate use of whatever.
The Constitution of the Republic enjoins the political parties to have democracy in their internal arrangements. Do you see this as democratic? That at the time when you are going for elections, people who are standing for the offices are donating gifts, and you say it's okay. Those who cannot afford and are competing should shut up.
I'm saying to you, there's a thin line. If somebody comes and says that I have donated and I've paid the rent of the office, are you going to say to the person that because you have paid rent, you cannot stand for elections? You understand? So it's how you use it.
Don't accept
For
it.
example, if
ask him to wait when the elections are over, or
that so somebody comes and says that I've donated a pickup to the party, and they say, oh no, you may be standing for elections, so we won't take your pickup. Let us finish the election. It will be a difficult situation. But if the person, for example, is to say that I've paid all the filing fees. For me, that would be a problem.
Okay.
Because there is direct inducement
now we have just about 2 minutes to go. James, take a minute on this.
I think it was a very...
this one, I can see you are comfortable.
I've been comfortable throughout. I mean, I can understand the difficulty Nana had in speaking to your questions. I mean, but something, I'm not sure that you're surprised. This is quite typical NPP. If you look at the whole recent history of the New Patriotic Party, they seem to believe in monetizing their elections. You recall when the 17 candidates went to Legon, and you saw, I mean, how they ran the very flamboyant monetizing.
They bribed the delegates.
Elections. Well, I think that there was an allegation there that one side was he's asking.
Not proven.
No, I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm not a member.
Then why do you put out on truth?
It's not truth. I'm not saying.
Why?
If you are getting distracted. Who made the allegation?
If you are getting distracted,
who made the allegation?
Who made the allegation? The opportunity.
I mean, there was a very thanks. I mean, there was a very people who were within the Great Hall and shouting that parts of the MPP people who were contesting were busily bribing at the side that they nearly
Did you hear Jay? He said, "Gift, that is the guy's talent."
Well,
for example,
I think that again,
if your talent is in communicating well, you should use it.
Well, I disagree, and because look, you are standing for elections. 2 days.
Okay.
Too
bad. I've been flagged. Our time is up. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you all of you for sending your text messages and keeping your dials here on this show. My guests have been Nana Komia, who is immediate past communications director of the New Patriotic Party. Dr. Mawai Zakaria is a development and organizational policy analyst. James Ejenim Boateng is a staffer at the office of the president. Egbert Fable Jr. is lawyer, editor of the Ghanaian Observer newspaper. I am Samson Ladi Ayenini. We thank you very much. We'll be back next week. This show has been produced by the executive producer, Sedem Ofori, and supported by Sir Samuel Odame and Sir Emmanuel Ante. Have a good afternoon.
Newsfile is brought to you in association